Hello, BookTube. Last night might have been triple eviction, but for this weekly reads, it's going to be quadruple bailing. However, there's a big book of poetry I need to talk about first. SOS by Amiri Baraka. This is a collection of Baraka's work from 1961 to 2013. It's more of a selected poetry. I think there's one book that's completely in the collection, like every poem in that collection's in here. And I think another selected poetry collection is in here, though. What am I trying to say? It's pretty much the collections that came before. That the select poems that appeared in Trains of Fluency are in pretty much the earlier books rather than Trains of Fluency itself. And then all of Folklore. There's also uncollected poems and a selection of Baraka's musical endeavors. His poems he did for that he set to music, I guess. I enjoyed much of the collection. I think Baraka is a poet that's hit or miss for me. There's a lot of his work that I really enjoy. Somebody Blew Up America, a few others, and then there are some that I'm not as fond of. So yeah, so it's pretty good and interesting reading experience. And now on to the bailing. So I read SOS Saturday and the first part of Sunday. And then on Sunday I started with some fiction and then continued on through Wednesday. So the first book, Crooked Little Heart by Lamott. This is general fiction. It's about Rosie. What's her last name? Oh, Ferguson. Who's not quite a tennis prodigy, but she's really into tennis, and her family are going through times. She's growing up, coming of age. Her family are having their issues. Her stepfather is trying to write that novel that just will not come. Her mother is having a midlife crisis. There's this weird guy who watches her play tennis. Yeah. I don't know if I should say I liked the writing or not. On one level, I did really enjoy the writing, but the narrative, it's so fractured. Points of view shift within chapters, which is something I can't stand. I much rather have a point of view be consistent throughout a chapter. Also, there seems to be jumps in time that may or may not necessarily be explained or neatly taken care of. The characters, I think, were a bit more types than really fleshed out, particularly the minor or the secondary ones. And I'm assuming at some point there is a major character revelation or turn, but I didn't read far enough to find out. So, in a way, I think I'm kind of frustrated I didn't make as better headway into this book. And after I go through all of my bails, I'll touch on this because I need to rant a bit about bailing. I'm not going to throw these books. So next on Monday, I started The Dark Mirror by Juliet Marillier. So as far as this book is concerned, I have heard good things about Juliet Marillier from several booktubers who do read fantasy. It's not exclusively what they read. It's a good chunk of what they read, and Marillier is quite popular with them. And I wanted to check her work out for a while, and I saw this book and another by her at Golden's Book Exchange when I went last year, and so I picked it up. It's a historical fantasy about King Brede, who ruled in post-Roman, pre-Anglo-Saxon England and Scotland, and it's about his tutelage under the High Druid Bricolac. Oh no, Brachan. What did I get? Oh, Bricolac's the character from the Scar, Brachan of Medieval. And then taking in the fairy gold Tuala, and then eventually becoming king. And the book opens with Brede coming into Brachan's household as a ward. And pretty much there begins an info dump that probably takes up a good 50 pages or so. It's like I mean, the writing's okay, but it just I think a better job could have been done integrating this long info dump throughout the book, or really how much of this book could have been cut and it was still making a fantastic novel. I mean, either starting with Tuala being found or them older rather than this info dumpy beginning. It's also from the early 2000s, and I haven't really gotten on very well with some fantasy written in like the early 2000s and before, that the style is very off-putting for me. And in this case, it's that info dump. Just, if I want all of this history, I would just track down a history of post-Roman, pre-Anglo-Saxon England or Britain, and it probably would be a heck of a lot more enjoyable. So on Tuesday, I started Black Leviathan by Bernd Perplies, or I'm thinking it's Perplies or Perplies. Sorry if I'm butchering the pronunciation, and translated from the German by Lucy Van Cleef. This is basically Moby Dick with the dragons and airships. And it's about a young crystal. So basically, airships are capable because of these special crystals that can float and make objects float. And the main character, Leon, is an apprentice crystal carver until he runs into some trouble and is forced to flee and sign on with a Drakenjäger or dragon hunter ship, who unfortunately is captained by Adaron or Ahab, who is looking for this specific dragon because in the prologue to the book, this dragon basically destroyed his first ship. And while I did enjoy the world building quite a bit, the translation is incredibly basic. It's just, it's serviceable. And the characters and their dialogue are basic and just, serviceable. So it's rather frustrated by that. So I didn't make much way with this one either. And finally, I started Embelled on The Winged Histories by Sofia Samatar. This is a kind of sequel to her earlier book. Let me see, I'm forgetting what it's called. Oh, A Stranger in Alondria. Even though I don't think you have to read A Stranger in Alondria to read this book, this is more of a novella collection of interlocked novellas featuring 4 women who are engaged in a rebellion in Alondria. And I mean, the writing, it's incredibly poetic, but in such a way that the story itself is alienated, and the characters are alienated. And I didn't want to continue it. Just, I don't want to say boring as much as, I guess maybe it could have started a bit more where the plot, the story actually begins, rather than having a sort of prologue in childhood, where a story begins with a character's childhood, even though the main story begins years or decades from this point. It's we don't need this sort of prologue. Just begin with the sort of inciting incident and go from there, rather than this sort of introductory prologue. But anyway, that book was starting to bite into my hand. Anyway, so those were my bales. So I was pretty depressed and frustrated with all of these bales. It is just incredibly frustrating. I don't like to bail. I want to love every book I read, but I'm also impatient and easily frustrated, enraged, bored with a book. But obviously 4 books in a row it's becoming a running gag, and I don't know what's the issue. I don't know if it's impatience, some kind of me wanting to read as much as I can and just piling too many books and not really basically being so buried with reading and that I can't work my way out, and it's just Bailapalooza. Or if it's these are just books that are not James books. That's entirely possible. While part of me is, like I talked about in my writing video, of there are books I like, and that I do feel a certain sort of pressure to read as widely as possible, because particularly like with general fiction, it's sort of acceptable to read general fiction, while less acceptable to read genre fiction. Even though generally I much prefer science fiction and fantasy to general fiction. At the same time, I do legitimately want to try to read as widely as I can, although that does obviously prevent reading deeply into a genre than I would like to read. But anyway, so I'm not entirely sure if it's just there are expectations and ambitions that regarding my reading that I can't really do, and I'm overreacting. It's just books that are not for me, or if it's a continuation of a trend I've noticed where I will bail on books. I will set them aside. I will put them away after some point early in the book that just annoys me, ticks me off, doesn't work for me. And then I'll set it aside for a few months, maybe even a few years, and then come back to it, and whatever issue I had with the beginning is, I can read through it and then enjoy the rest of the book. I mean, this has happened with The Scar by China Mieville, The Darkness That Comes Before by R. Scott Baker. I remember I'm completely blanking on her right now. And there are several other examples. Leviathan Wakes by James S.A. Corey. And then there are times when it doesn't quite work. Now I'm going to forget them too. Ancillary Justice by Anne Leckie. I've never gotten on with. I've tried about 2 or 3 times. The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. I've tried it twice. Haven't gotten on with it. So, I don't know. But it is quite frustrating. And I'm thinking I might, towards either the end of this year or next year, I might do something with all of these bales, particularly the ones that I personally own, and do a sort of reading project where I'll give them a second go, or more goes if I've tried to read them a few times, but at least a second go. I don't know exactly how many, and it depends how my TBR looks. But anyway, so I decided, well, maybe the problem is I really want to read something else. That right now, for most of this year, I've been really craving nonfiction. That nonfiction has really worked for me. And so maybe I should just, rather than arbitrarily waiting for November to binge on nonfiction for the whole month or for the rest of the year, just go ahead and start nonfiction now, or reading nonfiction now. So I went and read the latest issue, or not the latest issue. This is the June issue of National Geographic. And I quite enjoyed it. I needed this. So some of the features were, there's a piece on the last voices of World War II, and then also one on Hiroshima, which I thought were incredibly moving. like when the bomb fell, which is about Hiroshima. They were moving. Marching Towards Extinction, which is about emperor penguins in Antarctica and the receding ice shelf. I thought was really powerful. There was the blue. Oh no, that was Taking the Lead, which is about women politicians in Afghanistan, Iraq, Bolivia, and New Zealand. I thought was really interesting, although I think maybe New Zealand didn't quite fit in with like the general thrust of the story from Iraq, Afghanistan, and Bolivia, because with Iraq, Afghanistan, and Bolivia, it was very much women's rights and the dangers female politicians face. While in New Zealand, it was more who are the women in power and who do they speak for. And then the last story was on skateboarding in Southern California, which I thought was really cool and amazing, even though the author kind of sort of had a bit of the vibe of not really understanding the subject. But I mean, it was still very cool, and I really enjoyed it. And I do actually like skateboarding. I used to watch the X Games and other extreme sport competitions. Obviously, X Games, the Dew Tour. I quit in the past few years. I haven't really been watching much in the way of TV, really. But I quite enjoyed it when I watched it. So, anyway, really enjoyed this issue, and hopefully I can get around to reading the rest of my backup of National Geographic. I've got about 3 or 4 more issues to go. So anyway, what do I plan to read this coming week? First of all, I think I'm going to read or reread, because both of these will be rereads, America Bewitched by Owen Davies. This is a history of witchcraft in America from Salem to the present. It'll be a mix of history, cultural history, and yeah, and I'm looking forward to it. I really enjoyed it because I read it this twice, I think, and really enjoyed it. And I'm also going to reread Age of Conquests by Angelos Chaniotis. It's been a few years since I've read this, and I really enjoyed the book and can't wait to get back to it. So, that is my reading for next week. Hopefully I will have a much better reading week next week than I did this week. I'm pretty sure I will, since they're history books, and I'm doing a heck of a lot better with history than I am with the fiction. But anyway, wish me luck. So before I start to ramble, I'll go ahead and sign off for now. Thank you, BookTube. Have a great weekend. I will hopefully see you again or make another video on Monday, and if not, certainly attack on Tuesday. And until then, thank you again. Have a great weekend and stay safe.